Amazing transformation. Female millionaire CEO faints, revealing a touching bond with a little G. Jessica felt the room close in. As the words from her CFO blurred into a haze of tension, dread clawed at her gut. The clock ticked with a sinister rhythm, and her heart raced. This was the moment where her vision for a more compassionate tech environment would collide critically with the board's ambitions for profit. She sat straight, forcing a smile, but the tension in her shoulders told another story. What would her mother think of her now? Surely the woman who raised her on determination and grit wouldn't approve of giving in to profit-centric pressures. But that's what her board wanted. The facade cracked, and a wave of heat consumed her body. "Focus, Jessica," she murmured under her breath. She thought of Gabriel, the young boy whose mind sparkled with curiosity and hope. Every time she guided him through coding basics, she saw herself as a child, wide-eyed, vulnerable, but resilient. Yet the looming faces of her male counterparts reminded her that those ideals could easily be reshaped into whispers of incompetence. Their skepticism weighed heavy like chains around her neck as her resolve wavered, each taunting look echoing her worst fears. Could she lead, or was she just a distraction? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The boardroom felt suffocating, a spotlight of scrutiny holding her in place. Doubts began to ripple through her mind. Was her mentoring advancing her career or putting it at risk? While her heart beat in defense of Gabriel and the many she mentored, the ruthless ambition of her colleagues loomed, sharp and unyielding. She'd fought against the current her whole life, striving for visibility in a world that favored the status quo. Yet was that fight about to be lost over an ideal? Suddenly the room spun and Jessica's legs weakened. With an alarming rush, she dropped to the floor, her vision closing in to spots. Panic flooded her consciousness, not just from the faintness, but from the embarrassment and fear of what lay ahead, a backlash against her very essence. Would they see this as an opportunity, an opening to drive a wedge between her and Gabriel's future? As Jessica lay there, shadows danced above her, the faces she trusted now becoming a blur of condescension and judgment. She fought against the wave of dismay rising in her throat. The connection she'd felt with Gabriel, the lifeblood of her passion, suddenly seemed fragile, as if teetering on the brink of dissolution. Every heartbeat resonated with the question pressing in. Was her fight for Gabriel worth sacrificing her own aspirations? Above the chaos swirling in her mind, the realization dawned. She stood at an intersection. Each path diverged sharply, the corporate ambition skirting the edge of heartlessness, the other a beacon of hope illuminating a frail bridge back to her roots. Jessica grappled with the truth. The board's ultimatum loomed like a dark cloud, threatening her every move. What would she ultimately choose? Would she allow their doubts to cage her, or break free to reshape the very foundation of success? As the tension exploded, lining her thoughts with uncertainty and desperation, the choice sharpened into focus. Jessica knew whatever decision she made would not just shape her future, but the fate of many little Gabs still dreaming on the other side of that corporate wall. Would she confront the darkness head-on, or let it spiral into a silence she feared? The cool tile floor felt supporting beneath Jessica, almost surreal as she regained consciousness. The murmur of the boardroom faded slowly, replaced by a muffled concern from those around her. She lay there, breathing deeply, each inhale sharpening her focus. Moments passed like an eternity before she gained enough strength to rise. As she pushed herself up, her heart raced, not just from the physical strain, but from the emotional upheaval. Those in the room gazed at her, a mix of surprise and concern, but their expressions felt distant, separate from her reality. She could almost hear her mother's voice in her mind, urging her to rise, to fight. "You're stronger than you think," it echoed like a mantra, a reminder of sacrifice and determination. Jessica blinked away the fog, shaking off the remnants of vulnerability. Whatever doubts threatened to immobilize her were now met with a burgeoning fire. Gathering herself, she looked around the boardroom, her eyes locking onto the skeptics' faces. The haze at the edges of her vision cleared, and she reclaimed her composure. They didn't want a leader who faltered. They wanted a figurehead who could deliver profits, someone malleable. But she was no puppet strung along by their ambitions. She would unfurl her own strings. "Let's address the elephant in the room," she stated, her voice steady, cutting through the air with newfound purpose. Murmurs ceased, and she recognized the gravity of the moment. Daring to show her true self, she continued, "You want numbers. I understand that. I do too, but not at the expense of our values." Jessica perceived the incredulity in their eyes, a mixture of surprise and contempt. It ignited something deeper within her. They expected compliance, a shrinking violet that would avoid confrontation. Well, she was done with avoidance. "I believe we can pave a route to success that includes mentorship and inclusivity while still achieving financial growth," she declared, her confidence shifting the atmosphere. "It's essential for innovation. Look around at the minds we are cultivating. Are we not investing in the future?" With every word, she felt her conviction strengthening, but doubts still whispered in her head, echoing the narrative of weakness. Was this gamble worth it? "Jessica, don't you think focusing on idealism will alienate stakeholders?" her CFO reminded her, his tone dripping with condescension, as if challenging her to revert to silence. She felt the heat rise within, igniting her fists at her sides. "I would rather hold fast to my values and stand alone than compromise who we are for monetary gain," Jessica shot back, embracing the tension. "If you believe in success, you should trust that we can infuse our missions with integrity. That's how we inspire loyalty, not fear." The silence was palpable and heavy. Jessica scanned the room. So many faces, eyes narrowing with challenge, hostility, and perhaps grudging respect. She no longer felt like a solitary figure, weak against the tide. She stood as a leader, shaping her own narrative. "A company is only as strong as its values," she concluded. "I ask you to consider what kind of legacy we want to create, not just for ourselves, but for future visionaries like Gabriel. If you can't align with that, then perhaps we need to rethink who we want at the helm." With that, she could feel the weight of history on her shoulders. The room flickered with tension, and she prepared for the retribution that seemed inevitable. Would they rally behind her call for integrity, or would they see her as a threat to their ambitions? Jessica took a deep breath, steeling herself for the confrontation looming ahead. The moment of reckoning would soon unveil her true allies. She had taken a step into the unknown, embracing the risk and preparing for whatever fallout awaited her. "Are you with me?" she asked, each word laden with resolve and challenge. A collective silence ensued, like the calm before a storm. And then a faint sound, a stir of uncertainty from the back of the room. Would someone finally step forward? The moment stretched long as the silence in the room weighed heavily on Jessica's shoulders. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, each beat cascading between anxiety and hope. As she scanned the room, searching for a flicker of support, she noticed a familiar figure shifting uncomfortably near the back. Gabriel, a young intern she had been mentoring since his first day. He was the epitome of fresh ideas and raw talent, But today he looked unsure, his brow knit in distress, as if he could feel the tension emanating from her. In that instant, Jessica realized she wasn't just standing up for herself. She was fighting for the future of those like him, the dreamers and innovators who could be stifled by outmoded practices and cynicism. "Gabriel," she called, her voice cutting through the heavy air. "I need your perspective. What do you think about maintaining our values while increasing profitability?" His eyes widened, and for a second she feared she had put him on the spot too harshly. He hesitated, uncertainty clouding his features. Jessica glanced around the room, gauging the reactions of her colleagues. Some looked at her with irritation, others with curiosity. Yet a heartbeat of anticipation throbbed as Gabriel finally gathered himself, stepping forward with an assuredness that surprised both of them. "I believe we can innovate without compromising our integrity," he said, his voice steady. "What Jessica is saying resonates because we need to create a space where creativity flourishes, where our team feels valued. Investing in our people goes hand in hand with investment in profits. The two are not mutually exclusive." The room vibrated with the reverberating effect of his words. Jessica felt a rush of warmth. Here was her ally, someone she had nurtured, and now he was echoing her sentiments with such clarity that it sparked a shift in the atmosphere. "See?" She addressed the board, emboldened. "This is the emerging talent we're cultivating, people who understand that true leadership is built on trust and respect. We can't afford to lose sight of that." Without missing a beat, the CFO interjected again, a faint sneer playing on his lips. "And you honestly believe that clinging to ideals will be enough to sustain us in this competitive market?" Jessica squared her shoulders, adrenaline pulsing through her veins. "If we only chase profit at the expense of our people, we'll ultimately fail. Think about it. Would you rather have a team that fears consequences or one that feels empowered and motivated to innovate?" The tension escalated as labored breaths among her colleagues mingled with burgeoning interest. For each skeptic, a flicker of realization ignited. Some began shifting in their seats, considering her perspective. Yet the pressure continued to mount, and she sensed the need for a decisive move. Desperation clawed at her focus, compelling her to venture further. "Let's put it to a vote," she proposed, her voice carrying an edge of challenge. "If you're confident in a numbers-driven approach alone, I will step aside and allow you to take the reins." The murmurs escalated to a torrent of hushed discussions. Her challenge stood not only as a test of loyalty, but also a reflection of her own commitment to authenticity. The clock ticked steadily in the background, each second pulling them closer to a pivotal decision. Jessica took a moment to center herself, reviewing all the sacrifices and sleepless nights. Could she really let it go? In that instant, she recognized a profound truth. Real leadership emerged not just in moments of glory, but in vulnerability as well. She could redefine the narrative, intensifying her moral stance while embracing her fears. The unease in the room shifted, a spectrum of emotions deepening as whispers transformed into spirited dialogue. Someone was bound to respond, either out of loyalty or indignation. As a figure rose from behind the rows of seated executives, Jessica's heart splintered. Between hope and trepidation. Would it be support or resistance? What awaited her on the other side of this pivotal moment? All she could do was wait, her breath caught in anticipation of what would follow. Would all she fought for align behind her, or would she face a harsh reality of opposition? A hush fell over the room as the figure approached the front. Lisa, a senior executive known for her stoic demeanor and sharp decision-making. Jessica felt her pulse quicken. Lisa hadn't ever stepped forward in such a high-stakes context. She was perhaps the last person anyone expected to take a stand. As Lisa cleared her throat, the atmosphere shifted again. "Jessica," she began, her voice steady yet laced with an underlying tremor. "I've been thinking about what you said, about trust in leadership." The room held its collective breath, and Jessica felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. "I understand there's been turbulence," Lisa continued, "but I've grown to believe that a company thrives when everyone feels empowered. The numbers don't lie, but they don't tell the full story either." Jessica's heart soared. It was a voice she had long hoped to hear, but would it be enough to sway the others? "I have concerns about compromising our principles," Lisa added softly, glancing toward the CFO. "If we move forward without aligning our core values with our business objectives, we risk alienating our greatest asset, our people." Those words seemed to catalyze a reaction felt throughout the gathering. The CFO's frown deepened, but others nodded, voices rising among the ranks, murmuring in agreement. An instinct told Jessica this was a crucial moment. She needed to steer it toward a resolution, to solidify the shift in momentum. "Thank you, Lisa," she said, taking a step forward, her heart swelling with gratitude. "It's precisely this kind of openness that will allow us to navigate challenges creatively." Tension hung palpably as several executives now turned their attention to one another, weighing the implications of this sudden shift in allegiance against their long-held beliefs. Occasionally, Jessica caught a look of uncertainty flickering across some faces and sensed the resistance still simmering beneath the surface. Just as a glimmer of optimism filled her, Mark, the CFO, leaned in with a pointed glare, cutting the nascent support in the room. "So, what's the plan?" he scoffed, a sudden edge of aggression permeating his voice. "We should just aim for increased morale? That sounds nice, but it's not going to pay the bills." Jessica's stomach clenched. She realized this was the crux of her challenge. The urgency coursed through her veins. "No, it's more than that. A sustainable business model incorporates both morale and profit. We must explore alternatives that evolve our practices without sacrificing our values." A moment of hesitation danced in the air, and Jessica sensed the tangible friction colliding in the room. Would Mark's unyielding cynicism drown out the newfound hope she was trying to cultivate? "Any ideas on how to implement this?" Mark leaned back with arms crossed, a hint of arrogance playing on his lips. The unspoken challenge lingered in the air. Could Jessica rise to the occasion and drive the conversation towards concrete plans? Could she demonstrate that her approach wasn't just idealistic, but fundamentally practical? Jessica had to confront the discomfort that churned within. She needed to articulate a vision that balanced people's needs with profitability, something that would challenge their expectations without losing the essence of her beliefs. "Let's form a task force," she suggested, her voice gaining strength. "We can bring representatives from every department to carve out innovative pathways that align our goals with our core values." The words hung suspended, a tightrope strung between acceptance and dissent. She could feel the ambition surging through her, the desire to be the leader who sparked transformation. Yet doubt loitered at the edges, attempting to draw her back into the safety of conformity. Through the murmurings, she discerned glimpses of renewed commitment, but lingering doubts remained, and she sensed those like Mark were ready to retaliate. Jessica couldn't ignore the instinct that whispered about the brewing storm ahead. The stakes were rising. Could she persist in this fight? Would her vision for a more profound leadership and team empowerment challenge the status quo enough to withstand the opposing forces? With each word, she felt the intensity amplify, winding tighter into an unsettling knot within her stomach. The moment to truly transform her professional narrative was almost within her grasp, but would she shatter or soar amid the winds of opposition? Jessica held her breath, feeling the weight of the room pressing down on her shoulders. Mark's disdain hung in the air, a subtle but fierce reminder of the challenges ahead. She could see his expression harden as he prepared to pounce on any falter in her resolve. This was a pivotal moment, and she couldn't afford to lose ground. "Financials are essential, Jessica. I'm sure we can all agree on that," Mark replied, leaning forward, a mock gleam in his eye. Jessica sensed the hidden threat behind the facade of professionalism. He was willing to use any slip-up as leverage. "Of course," Jessica responded, her voice steelier than before. "But values are what guide our decisions. We need to ensure that our financial achievements come hand in hand with a motivated workforce. Let's look at companies that have thrived on this principle." A few heads nodded. Jessica spotted some executives who had previously seemed disengaged, their expressions now showing tentative interest. She seized the moment, drawing deeper from her well of preparation. Take a look at the case studies of those organizations with high employee retention rates and their financial success. Transformations aren't just possible. They are the formula for thriving companies in today's market. The murmurs grew louder, encouraging her spirit. Yet in that same breath, she couldn't shake the awareness of Mark's skepticism radiating at her flank. What if these changes mean increasing our operating costs? Can you guarantee that effort translates to profit? Jessica took a deep breath. The slight hint of panic fluttered in her chest. She remembered the countless nights she'd spent crafting strategies in her mind like a master chess player. This wasn't merely about battling Mark. It was about cementing her grasp as a leader. No one can guarantee profits, but we can create a culture that attracts and retains talent. That is a more secure investment in the long run. The silence in the room softened into contemplative murmurs, providing the opening she craved. "I can propose that we roll out a pilot program aiming for immediate feedback from employees about what motivates them, their engagement and satisfaction. If we can demonstrate an increase in morale and productivity, we'll have the necessary metrics to justify our approach to the board." Jessica felt the surge of adrenaline coursing through her, raw and exhilarating. This was her arena, where her confidence could redirect the energy in the room. No longer was she merely defending her vision, she was laying down effective tactics to uphold it. Lisa's supportive nod fueled her further. "I can be a sounding board," Lisa offered knowingly, her voice steady, "and I believe using metrics will yield backing from the board." Jessica's heart fluttered as hope blossomed inside her. Lisa's endorsement could tip the balance. She could almost taste the possibility of victory, a victory built on trust, values, and practicality. However, it was a fleeting sensation, as a sudden thought intruded. What if Mark could sabotage her efforts before they gained momentum? Her confidence wavered for a fleeting moment. It was a perfect opportunity for him to relish any weaknesses she might reveal. He was poised for his next strike. And how do you expect your team to embrace these changes? People generally resist change, especially when financial stability is in the mix. Jessica's pulse quickened. She began to grapple with ways to shift the conversation in her favor swiftly. Resistance happens when there's a lack of communication. Through transparent dialogues, we can alleviate fears and motivate our teams to buy into our vision. Engaged employees are productive employees. But beneath her words, doubt stirred. Could she truly bring about that kind of change, or was she merely striking chords of idealism that would backfire? In that moment, she heard Mark's scoff punctuating the room again, loud and deliberate. The confrontation had reached a new level, and she realized she'd need more than just plans. She needed unwavering determination. Mark's voice, that blend of arrogance and derision, gripped her. When the time comes to present to the board, will they see it this way, or will they focus solely on profits and losses? Jessica locked eyes with him, a quiet fire igniting within. They will hear us, she proclaimed, infusing her voice with resolve. But if we falter in delivering actionable insights on both engagement and profitability, we will be lost. I won't let that happen. As she felt conviction solidify within her, a sudden wave of fear crested against her confidence. The stakes were ever present, the battlefield only intensifying. She glanced around the room, the unease palpable. Could she maintain this newfound momentum, or would Mark's skepticism obliterate her efforts before they could flourish? The journey ahead was fraught with challenges she could not yet foresee. But as the intensity in the room swelled, one truth echoed unwaveringly. Transformation had its price, and she was prepared to pay it. What remained was to decipher if that price was attainable, or if the cost could ultimately consume her ambitions. The meeting droned on, but Jessica's focus fractured as her thoughts spiraled around the impending proposal. She could visualize the board's skepticism reflected in Mark's eyes, his unwavering commitment to his perspective poisoning her optimism. The intangible sense of dread loomed like dark clouds, but she was determined to flip the narrative. Let's discuss the response we expect from employees. If we don't hear their voices, how will we know what truly drives them? Jessica's groundwork was solidifying, but fear clawed at her insides. Would the employees even support an initiative that aimed to shift the corporate culture? She thought about the myriad of opinions, grievances, and hushed fears that circulated behind the office walls. In a moment of clarity, Jessica realized that this wasn't just an organizational strategy. It mirrored her own journey. Empowering others had always been a key driver in her professional landscape. As a child, she had often felt like an outsider, observing from the sidelines while others formed bonds she longed for. The years spent finding her voice were all colliding now, each moment replaying as she faced Mark and the board. The meeting blurred back into focus as Mark shifted his demeanor, sensing an opening. So tell us, Jessica, how do you expect to validate this pilot program? And who will ensure that the feedback we receive isn't just a collection of hollow praises? His voice felt like a striking blow intended to unnerve her. I've already researched similar programs in companies that thrived amidst challenges, she countered, injecting renewed vigor into her tone. With the right communication strategy and open sessions, we can provide a safe environment for authentic feedback. It's essential to track not only results, but also the nuances behind them. Sensing the room's energy level rising again, Jessica leaned on the strengthening support of the executives who appeared to rally behind her. Words poured forth, reflecting her belief in building a culture of trust, a space where team voices mattered. By regrouping often and addressing concerns directly, we can foster engagement and loyalty. My goal isn't merely to enact change, it's to create a shared vision of success. But Mark squared his shoulders, less convinced. And if they resent our approach? If emotions turn sour, how do you propose we rectify things? Take responsibility for actions and words that could mislead. Jessica's emotions surged. He was dissecting her plan. With an incisive scalpel, her gut tightened, a flash of self-doubt casting shadows on her confidence. What if her enthusiasm for people could backfire into chaos? But then she recalled Lisa, a moment shared over coffee when she'd confided her fears, how their paths intertwined through support and camaraderie. A flicker of resolve ignited in her. She wouldn't betray that connection. "Change often breeds discomfort, Mark," she replied, her voice steady, "but it is also an opportunity for growth. Will we enable progress with the knowledge gained through difficult conversations?" Mark's expression hardened, skepticism flickering in those calculated eyes. Yet the energy in the room shifted. The head nods grew more confident, intertwining hope with every share of vulnerability. Jessica realized that there was an entire team yearning for a leader who could forge a mission worth following to show them they were more than cogs in a financial machine. As the meeting wound down, she caught glimpses of allies emerging, their faces transformed, cracking layers of doubt to reveal encouragement. But in the pit of her stomach, a new dread grew. Could she sustain this emerging alliance against Mark's circling shadows? Could they withstand the scrutiny of those who only saw numbers? Jessica left the meeting, aware that the real battle loomed just ahead, the fight for authenticity wrapped in the veneer of authority. With the board meeting in less than a week, the pressure to validate her vision crystallized into a tangible obstacle. And the deeper question loomed larger. Was her ambition suffocating her authenticity? The drive to rise as a leader beckoned her into uncharted territories, where the cost of success might shatter her very foundation. With her resolve tested and alliances wavering, Jessica was left at a precipice, watching as the future unfurled, uncertain and challenging. The next move was hers, and the consequences could be irreversible. What awaited her beyond the horizon? The weight of her own expectations pressed heavily against Jessica's chest as she exited the boardroom, her heart drumming a frantic rhythm. With each step toward her office, she faced a tide of thoughts that threatened to pull her under. The encounter with Mark had left her shaken. He had been more than a skeptic. He was a barrier, a tangible embodiment of her doubts. She could almost hear the whispers of disapproval that lurked behind those boardroom doors. Placing her hand on the cool metal of her office door, she hesitated. In this space, she yearned to create a haven, a place where creativity and honesty could flourish. Yet she knew the battle for that environment was far from over. She needed to strategize, to confront her fears head-on, rather than allowing them to become debilitating phantoms. Jessica sank into her chair and opened her laptop, the screen illuminating her face. It displayed a jumble of ideas, charts, and feedback she had gathered over the last few weeks. She had envisioned this culture shift as a staircase leading to greater heights. Now she was faced with a daunting climb, each step a question of whether she could indeed carry her team alongside her. Her mind raced back to the conversation she had with employees. Each shared concern had painted a picture of a company longing for connection, authenticity, and leadership willing to listen. What if she could harness that energy, channel those insights to form a robust proposal for the board? She resolved to gather their voices again, this time aiming for deeper qualitative feedback that would strengthen her initiative. In the ensuing days, Jessica found herself divided between her expanding responsibilities and the importance of nurturing those fragile alliances. Scheduled meetings began to fill her calendar, each one crucial. She could feel the enthusiasm from her colleagues, but so too could she sense the anxiety hiding just beneath the surface, a reflection of her own turmoil. One afternoon, as she prepared for yet another presentation, the knot in her stomach tightened. She pulled up a reflection she had penned after her last meeting, recalling every moment she had felt both empowered and vulnerable. "Jessica, how do you balance ambition with authenticity?" a quiet voice in her mind whispered. Was she pursuing success at the expense of genuine relationships? Determined to quell her anxiety, she organized a roundtable discussion with a select group from different teams. This informal setting felt less daunting and allowed her to foster an environment conducive to open dialogue. Each participant brought unique insights, and Jessica sat enraptured as she listened to their thoughts unfold. She noticed Lisa's hesitance, a flicker of uncertainty that mirrored her own. With empathy, Jessica encouraged her to express her feelings about the potential changes. Soon, a poignant discussion emerged. Ideas flowed, criticisms were shared constructively, and hope grew with each sentiment expressed. As they wrapped up, Jessica felt a warmth settle in her chest. They had touched on raw fears, yet courage was born from vulnerability. Sometimes it's easier to avoid the discomfort, Lisa finally admitted, but I think we're on the verge of something great if we keep pushing ourselves. The clarity in that moment hit Jessica fiercely. Here was the essence of leadership, to navigate through discomfort and emerge stronger, collectively. By empowering others to voice their hesitations, she was cementing a foundation for transformation, a cause worth fighting for. With growing confidence, she began drafting her refined proposal, interweaving employee feedback and shared insights into a narrative of unity and growth that could resonate not only with the board, but also with the entire organization. But amidst a rising optimism, the undercurrent of impending confrontation with Mark loomed ominously. As she prepared her pitch for an audience that could easily sideline her intentions, doubt crept back, whispering that their expectations could crush her efforts. How will I stand my ground against Mark? The question replayed relentlessly in her mind, each iteration increasing the tension within her. She could feel the darkness lurking as the moment of truth approached, a reality where the cost of authenticity hung precariously in the balance. Jessica closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair, staring at the wall as revelations came and went. Was she ready to confront not only the board, but also the shadows of her past ambitions? The ultimate test awaited, and in the distance, an unexpected pivot beckoned. Could her challenge become the spark for change far beyond what she initially envisioned? The following days morphed into a whirlwind of preparation for Jessica. Each morning she arrived at the office with a constant buzz of determination, though the tension coiled tighter within her. The impending board presentation weighed heavily, its significance echoing through every conversation, every decision. The atmosphere in the office remained electric, the energy of her team ignited by the open forum discussion she had initiated. However, her own doubts still loomed like shadows, threatening to overshadow the light of her intentions. During lunch breaks filled with laughter and brainstorming, Jessica noticed how the collaboration around her enriched her vision for the company's future. The diverse perspectives shared and the personal stories of her colleagues inspired her, driving home the belief that they were ready for change. Yet, with this sense of community came a nagging fear. Could she translate this enthusiasm into the boardroom, where every word would be scrutinized? As the day of the presentation approached, Jessica put finishing touches on her proposal. The document felt like an extension of herself, infused with the voices she had gathered. Each data point, each anecdote, represented the collective frustrations and aspirations of her team, not merely statistics and slides. With every rewrite, the purpose crystallized, to foster an environment where innovation and vulnerability could coexist. That evening, Jessica found herself alone in her office, rehearsing her speech in front of the mirror. The reflection staring back at her mirrored both resolve and uncertainty. "You're not just selling ideas, you're advocating for people," she told herself, the mantra soothing yet challenging. The echoes of her previous clashes with Mark whispered warnings of the difficulties ahead, but she pushed those thoughts into the recesses of her mind. After countless iterations of her pitch, she felt a flicker of hope ignite deep in her gut. Perhaps she could do this. They had built a fragile but authentic connection, and she was determined to carry that into the meeting. She committed herself to a single, unequivocal truth. The cost of remaining silent, of conforming to old expectations, was far greater than the risk of confrontation. The morning of the board meeting dawned gray and rainy. As she dressed in a sleek navy blazer that felt simultaneously empowering and intimidating, Jessica felt the weight of the moment settle in. The car ride provided a moment of solace, her thoughts a swirl of resolve and apprehension. But amidst the noise, one thought remained clear. It was time to set the stage for transformation. Upon entering the boardroom, Jessica scanned the faces of her audience, each expression a mix of expectation and skepticism. Mark sat at the head of the table, his presence a constant reminder of the opposition she had to face. As she approached, the atmosphere shifted. The air vibrated with the tension of unspoken words. Taking a deep breath, she began her presentation, connecting the dots of her proposal to the heartfelt stories shared in their roundtable discussions. Engaging, she presented not merely facts, but the visions and hopes that her team had entrusted in her. As she spoke, she watched for signs of reaction among the board members, gauging their understanding and engagement. Halfway through her delivery, Mark leaned forward, a look of palpable disbelief flashing across his face. His skepticism was evident, but instead of retreating into her own anxieties, Jessica seized the momentum. "Mark, I understand the need for measurable outcomes, but the numbers alone can't capture the culture shift we need. This is about more than profit margins. It's about a workforce that feels valued. It's about inspiring a movement within these walls." Jessica held his gaze, and something within her shifted. The fear that would have normally paralyzed her now transformed into fierce determination. She realized she was no longer just pleading her case. She was advocating for the collective aspirations of her team. The rebuttal Mark prepared was quick and critical, but Jessica felt a new strength awaken inside her. The confrontation she had feared began to form into an opportunity. She was ready to face him, to engage in dialogue, instead of allowing his obstacles to crumble her resolve. "Let's not view this as a battle, but as a discussion," she proposed, her heart steadying with each word. "There's potential here, but we can only grasp it by embracing the uncomfortable truths and transforming them into actionable solutions." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Mark's face, and for the first time, the doubt she once felt about herself wavered. Could this be the moment where she began to shift not just the board's perception, but her own destiny? Little did she know, this confrontation would unveil not just opportunities for change, but buried truths about her own capabilities that would shake the very foundation of her beliefs. And as the discussion deepened, she felt herself ready to turn a corner she could have never imagined before. Would she finally uncover the potential hidden not just in her vision, but within herself? The discussion in the boardroom escalated, shifting from apprehension to engagement. Mark's skepticism didn't extinguish Jessica's resolve. Instead, it fueled an unexpected energy that sparked conversation among the other board members. She sensed a change in the room, a flicker of interest, a willingness to explore the ideas she had laid bare. Instead of standing on opposite sides, they were now engaged in a collective dialogue, her words igniting a realization among her peers. "Perhaps we've overlooked the human element in our metrics," one board member, Claire, offered thoughtfully. It was a welcoming change, a counter-argument that Jessica could use to bolster her confidence further. Reminded her that she wasn't alone in this fight. There were others who saw value in her approach. If we want to innovate, we must start by listening to those who live our values daily. Jessica felt a surge of energy as she built on Claire's statement. Exactly. Our employees have insight that could shape our strategic direction. Let's redirect our focus towards those insights and create platforms for voices that haven't been heard. She adjusted her stance, embracing the positive shift, responding to the energy in the room, and guiding it towards possibilities instead of obstacles. As they exchanged ideas, Jessica found herself evolving as a leader in real time. Her fears about Mark's resistance transformed into a deep sense of purpose. Every question raised by her colleagues felt less like an attack and more like an invitation to clarify her vision. She began to view each critique as a stepping stone towards refining her proposal, a chance to strengthen the foundation she had built upon. "Jessica," Mark interjected, his tone shifting from confrontational to a more curious inquiry. "If you're suggesting a shift in culture, how do we measure that success? How can we ensure this isn't just a fleeting initiative?" Instead of feeling cornered, Jessica felt empowered. Here was the very challenge she needed. We need to establish qualitative metrics alongside our quantitative assessments. Success can be seen in employee retention rates, satisfaction surveys, and even productivity levels. But we must also cultivate an atmosphere where team members feel their contributions are valued and recognized. The boardroom buzzed with murmurs. Who would have thought the conversation could veer from confrontation to collaborative exploration? Jessica squeezed her hands together, igniting a sense of solidarity among the members. This was her chance to establish herself not just as a manager, but as a thought leader. The deeper she ventured into the discussion, the more confident she became. She wove personal anecdotes from her own experiences in the workplace into her arguments, sharing how motivation rooted in community and support had driven her success. The narratives resonated, drawing nods from those around the table. Transformation requires vulnerability, and it begins with us, she added. We must collectively nurture a culture of support and risk-taking where everyone can express their true selves without fear. In that moment, Jessica realized something vital about her own journey. Vulnerability did not signify weakness. It was an incredible strength to forge meaningful connections and foster change. With that revelation, an unfamiliar but exciting wave of confidence washed over her. She was on the brink of redefining not only the company culture, but her role within it. Finally, when the discussion wound down, Mark surprised her with a nod of acknowledgement, uncharacteristically softening his usual rigidity. I appreciate your perspective, Jessica. Let's deliberate further. You've presented compelling reasons to consider this path. As applause filled the room, Jessica sensed the thawing of barriers. She had not just survived the boardroom debate, she'd emerged victorious, her voice now unmistakably heard and valued. Leaving the boardroom, she found herself grappling with a profound realization. The true essence of leadership was not merely being at the forefront, but facilitating connection and dialogue. Yet, beneath that euphoria lay a shadow of uncertainty. Had Mark's change of heart been sincere or merely a tactical retreat? The question loomed large as she prepared to handle the repercussions of what this newfound power and visibility might mean for her relationship with Mark and the business. Would she be able to continue this momentum, or would old habits deflate her hard-earned progress? The stage was set for further confrontation, and Jessica knew she had to be ready. What strategies would she devise to maintain this evolution within herself and her organization? The following weeks after the board meeting transformed Jessica's professional environment. Each day she entered her office reinforced the belief that change was not only possible, but palpable. The palpable energy among her colleagues shifted toward collaboration and support, a significant departure from the skepticism that had once reigned supreme. In her role as a female CEO at the helm of a company that once prioritized profits over people, Jessica had achieved the first vital step, a commitment to creating a more inclusive and compassionate workplace. The foundation was slowly solidifying, built on trust and shared vision, and she could feel the tide turning. Encouraged by the acceptance of her proposal, Jessica set in motion a program designed to foster open communication throughout the organization. Team lunches, feedback sessions, and collaborative projects filled the once dreary calendar with opportunities for engagement. She noticed the skepticism waning at even the highest levels of management, each executive beginning to see the value of investing in the human capital they had neglected for far too long. In private meetings, conversations with Mark shifted too. No longer the adversary, he began to act as a reluctant ally. To her surprise, he even proposed metrics for measuring employee satisfaction that aligned with the new initiatives. Jessica recognized this as a sign of progress. He was starting to integrate her philosophy with his data-driven approach. It was less about victory and defeat now. It was about shared accountability. Each day felt like a mile in the marathon of transformation. Jessica's confidence grew, fueled by the tangible changes she witnessed. She championed inclusion and empowerment, and soon she could walk into any meeting knowing her voice was not just tolerated, but valued. One particular afternoon, as Jessica navigated through the company cafeteria, she overheard snippets of conversation. Employees sharing their experiences of feeling heard and valued, discussing innovations sparked by the new meetings. A sense of fulfillment washed over her. An echo of her childhood ambition chimed in harmony with a newfound power. The dream was no longer just hers. It was living and breathing within the culture of her company. The ultimate test arrived when the time came to present their findings at the next board meeting, showcasing the initial success of the programs she had pioneered. The metrics gathered revealed a staggering increase in employee satisfaction and retention. Productivity had surged. She felt buoyed by anticipation, eager to share the momentum with her colleagues, and her resolve solidified. As she stepped up to address the board, Jessica felt the weight of her journey behind her. She was no longer clouded by vulnerability or self-doubt. Standing there, she embodied transformation, an unshakable leader recommitted not only to her vision but to her values. The results demonstrate an undeniable truth, she began, her voice steady and unwavering. Investing in our people galvanizes our success. When we prioritize authenticity and integrity, we foster an environment ripe for innovation that goes beyond profit margins. The faces around her reflected the journey they'd all been through. Mark offered nods of agreement. The board, who once viewed her as an outlier, now leaned in with interest. The discussions flowed freely, a stark contrast to previous encounters fueled by pushback. When she concluded her presentation, the applause that erupted was more than affirmation. It signaled a collective acceptance of the new direction. Feedback came not only from her allies, but also those who had been on the fence, the skeptics who engaged openly about the potential for growth through the programs Jessica had embraced. The triumph was tangible, but it became clear to her that success was not solely about the recognition received. It was woven into the personal conquests she'd achieved throughout this journey. She had confronted self-doubt, wrestled with vulnerability, and emerged stronger. Those challenges shaped her into the leader she was destined to become. As she left the boardroom that day, there was a palpable shift in the atmosphere, a renewed spirit of inclusivity enveloping her. No longer was she merely a figurehead. She had claimed her space at the table and was paving the way for future leaders like Gabriel, encouraging them to express their own potential. Each day moving forward promised challenges, but now she stood equipped with the unmistakable confidence and the profound fulfillment that came from knowing she could achieve her goals while remaining true to herself. Jessica had conquered her greatest fear, the fear of not being heard. Now she was not only a CEO, she was a powerful advocate, a mentor, and an innovator, laying the groundwork for a bright future ahead. The future shimmered boldly before her, inviting exploration and growth. The achievements she had unlocked would create a legacy for generations to come. Now is the moment to embrace this story of transformation. You need to subscribe now for more exclusive emotional journeys that inspire personal growth. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm and help others discover powerful stories. Comment below your reactions and theories about Jessica's incredible journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel empowered. Don't wait even one more second to show your support.